The emergency weather alert pierced through the corporate building's silence at 9:47 p.m., but Marcus Chun had already felt the storm coming in his bones. 23 floors above the city streets, he pushed his maintenance cart down the marble corridors of Meridian Corporation, watching lightning fracture the sky beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The building groaned against wind gusts that rattled even these reinforced panes. Marcus paused his work, studying the radar on his phone. Red and purple masses swirled toward downtown, promising the kind of storm that turned streets into rivers and knocked out power grids. He'd seen worse during his years in emergency management, but those days felt like another lifetime now. Tonight, he was just a night janitor making sure the executive floor stayed pristine. The elevator chimed behind him, unexpected at this hour. Marcus turned as the door slid open, revealing a woman in an expensive charcoal suit, her heels clicking against the marble as she stepped out. Even the dim after-hours lighting, he recognized her immediately. Victoria Meridian, the CEO whose name graced the building's facade. She looked smaller than in the corporate photos, more human somehow, with worry lines creasing her forehead as she glanced toward the windows. Before we continue with Marcus and Victoria's encounter, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe storms like this are common where you're from. The wind howled louder now, and Marcus noticed how Victoria's confident stride faltered slightly as thunder rolled overhead, promising a night neither of them would forget. Victoria's phone buzzed frantically in her hand as she paced near the windows, her heels creating a sharp rhythm against the marble. She spoke in clipped tones to someone Marcus couldn't see, her free hand gesturing with the practiced authority of someone accustomed to solving problems with decisive action. But tonight, even her influence couldn't command the weather. "My driver can't get through the flooding on 5th Street," she said into the phone, her voice carrying a note Marcus had never heard from the polished woman in corporate videos. Vulnerability, perhaps. Raw human concern. "The parking garage is completely flooded. I'm essentially trapped here until morning." Marcus cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am," he said, stepping forward with the careful respect of someone who understood workplace hierarchies. "The storm's going to get worse before it gets better. The weather service is calling it an onsenadicate system. If you'd like, there's a break room on this floor with a couch, coffee, and some emergency supplies. It's not much, but it's safe and warm." Victoria ended her call and studied him with sharp green eyes that seemed to catalog everything at once. The maintenance uniform, the graying at his temples, the calm way he'd assessed the situation while she'd been focused on logistics and escape routes. "You work here nights?" she said, more statement than question. "Yes, ma'am. Marcus Chun, building maintenance. I weathered storms before. This building's solid, but the roads won't be passable until dawn. The break room's got backup power and water. You're welcome to wait it out there." Something in his tone made her shoulders relax slightly, as if she'd recognized competence beneath his humble offer. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the 23rd floor into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, casting everything in an eerie red glow that transformed the familiar corporate corridors into something alien. Victoria's sharp intake of breath echoed in the sudden quiet, her phone screen providing a small circle of blue light around her face. Marcus moved with purpose, his footsteps sure despite the changed lighting. He'd walked these halls in darkness before during routine maintenance checks, knew every corner and obstacle by memory. "The emergency generator will keep essential systems running," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "But the main grid's down. Could be hours before they get power restored with this kind of damage." He guided Victoria toward the break room, one hand lightly touching her elbow in a gesture that was protective rather than presumptuous. She found herself following without question, something about his calm confidence cutting through the executive's instinct to take charge. The storm's intensity surprised even Marcus. Through the break room's single window, he watched transformers exploding in brilliant flashes across the city grid, each burst taking out another neighborhood's power. Victoria sank onto the small couch, her corporate armor of authority seeming to slip away in the red emergency lighting. "This isn't exactly how I planned to spend tonight," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Marcus was already moving, checking emergency supplies with the systematic efficiency of someone who'd managed crisis situations before. "Plans change," he said simply, "but we'll get through it. The building's designed for this. And sometimes the unexpected turns out better than what we had planned." The coffee Marcus brewed on the emergency burner filled the small break room with warmth that went beyond temperature. Victoria wrapped her hands around the plain white mug, studying him as he efficiently organized their makeshift shelter. His movements held a quality she recognized from her own crisis management days, before Meridian Corporation consumed her life. Practice competence born from experience. "You've done this before," she observed, watching him check emergency radio frequencies with the ease of long familiarity. "Not the janitor thing. Crisis management." Marcus paused, his hands stilling on the radio dial. "A lifetime ago, yes. I coordinated emergency response for the state. Hurricanes, floods, tornado damage." He turned the radio's volume low, letting weather updates provide background rhythm to their conversation. "But that was before Emma." "Emma? My daughter. She's 8 now." Marcus's voice softened with a father's tenderness that Victoria found unexpectedly moving. "My wife Sarah died in a flash flood 3 years ago. Ironic, considering my job was supposed to keep people safe from exactly that kind of disaster." He sat across from Victoria, his hands cradling his own coffee mug. "After the funeral, I realized Emma needed stability more than I needed a career. Night maintenance pays enough, and I'm home when she gets out of school." Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition of shared loss and sacrifice she hadn't expected to find in this sterile corporate tower. The storm outside seemed less threatening suddenly, the emergency lighting less harsh. In the quiet that followed his words, she found herself seeing Marcus Chun not as the building's janitor, but as a man who'd chosen love over ambition. The vulnerability in Marcus's voice seemed to unlock something in Victoria that she'd kept carefully guarded behind boardroom composure and shareholder meetings. She found herself speaking before her executive training could intervene, words spilling out with surprising honesty. "I understand about choosing between career and family," she said quietly, "though I'm not sure I made the right choice." Marcus waited, sensing there was more, his patient silence inviting confidence in a way that felt both foreign and welcome to a woman accustomed to rapid-fire business exchanges. "My son David is 16, Victoria continued, staring into her coffee as if it held answers she'd been searching for. "His father and I divorced 2 years ago. Ugly custody battle, lawyers turning our family into a war zone. David blames me for destroying his stability. He's probably right." She laughed, but it held no humor. "I built this company from nothing, convinced myself I was creating a legacy for him. Instead, I created an empire and lost my family." The storm rattled the windows with renewed force, but inside their small sanctuary, the atmosphere had shifted from awkward politeness to genuine human connection. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his maintenance uniform somehow less noticeable now, his presence filling the space with quiet strength. "Emma asks me sometimes why we can't have a bigger house like her friends," Marcus said. "And I tell her that home isn't about the size of the building. It's about whether the people inside it choose to see each other. Really see each other." His eyes met Victoria's directly. "Sounds like David's still looking for that choice from you." The emergency radio crackled to life with urgent voices that made Marcus's entire posture change. Victoria watched as years of crisis training reasserted itself in his movements, his casual demeanor sharpening into focused alertness. "Meridian Tower, this is Emergency Management Central. We're showing structural alerts from your building's foundation sensors. Water levels in the underground parking areas are rising faster than projected." Marcus was already on his feet, moving toward the door with purpose that transformed him before Victoria's eyes. "The basement flood pumps should have activated automatically," he said, more to himself than to her. "But if the main power grid failure knocked out the backup systems. He turned back to Victoria, and she saw something in his expression that made her stomach tighten with concern. "How bad could it get?" she asked, following him into the corridor where emergency lighting cast long shadows. Marcus paused at the emergency stairwell door, his hand on the handle. "If the foundation pumps fail completely and the storm surge continues at this rate, we could have structural integrity issues. Water pressure against the building's base, possible flooding of the lower mechanical floors." His voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd faced worse scenarios. "I need to check the pump status manually. The control room is on the 3rd floor." Victoria felt her CEO instincts kick in, the familiar rush of crisis management overriding personal conversation. "I'm coming with you," she said, kicking off her heels and grabbing them in one hand. "This is my building. I should know if it's in danger." Marcus studied her face in the red emergency lighting, seeing determination replace vulnerability. After a moment, he nodded. "Stay close and follow my lead." The stairwell echoed with their footsteps as they descended through floors Victoria had never seen, past mechanical levels and service areas that formed the hidden infrastructure of her corporate empire. Marcus moved with sure confidence in the emergency lighting, his hand occasionally touching her elbow to guide her around obstacles or warn of uneven steps. She found herself trusting his guidance completely, her usual need for control subordinated to his obvious expertise. The 3rd floor mechanical room hummed with the sound of working pumps and backup generators. But Marcus's expression grew more serious as he studied the control panel displays. 3 of the 6 foundation pumps are offline, he said, his fingers moving across switches and gauges with practiced efficiency. The main flood barriers are holding, but barely. Water levels are still rising. Victoria watched him work, seeing leadership in action that had nothing to do with corner offices or shareholder meetings. This was competence born from real knowledge, authority earned through experience rather than inherited through position. "What do we need to do?" she asked, surprising herself with how naturally she deferred to his expertise. Marcus pulled out his phone and began making calls to emergency services, coordinating with city engineers and power company supervisors with the smooth professionalism of someone who'd managed larger crises. Victoria found herself taking notes on her own phone, following his lead in organizing repair priorities and resource allocation. They worked together with unexpected synchronization, her business acumen complementing his technical knowledge. As Marcus explained pump specifications to a city engineer, Victoria realized she was watching someone who could run emergency operations for an entire region, someone whose talents were being wasted on emptying trash cans and mopping floors. The first pale light of dawn crept through the mechanical room's small windows as the last emergency pump hummed to life, finally stabilizing the building's foundation systems. Victoria felt exhaustion settling into her bones, but also something else she hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of working alongside someone whose competence matched her own, whose calm presence had guided them through genuine crisis. Marcus wiped grease from his hands with a maintenance rag, his face showing the fatigue of a night spent in focused emergency management. "The storm's moving east now," he said, checking weather updates on his phone. "Water levels should start dropping within the hour. The building's secure." His phone buzzed with an incoming call, and Victoria saw his expression soften immediately as he answered. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his voice taking on the tender tone she'd heard earlier when he spoke about his daughter. "Yes, Daddy's safe. The storm was loud, wasn't it? You did exactly right staying in bed until morning." Victoria found herself smiling as she listened to one side of the conversation, hearing Marcus reassure his daughter with patient love that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. She thought of David, probably sleeping late in his father's upscale apartment, and wondered when she'd last spoken to her son with that kind of gentle care. "Emma's worried about you being at work during the storm," Marcus explained to Victoria after ending the call. "She has an imagination that runs toward dramatic possibilities. 80-year-olds think every thunderstorm might be the end of the world." "She sounds like a wise little girl," Victoria said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I'd like to meet her sometime, if that would be appropriate." Marcus approached the little girl with the careful, measured steps that had become second nature since the shooting 3 years ago. The bullet that shattered his kneecap had also shattered his career as Detective Rivera, forcing him to trade his badge for a security uniform and his pension for hourly wages. But the instincts remained sharp, and right now they were telling him this child needed help. His limp had cost him everything he'd worked toward for 15 years on the force. The department's medical retirement came with a fraction of his former salary, barely enough to cover rent on their modest 2-bedroom apartment. Danny had never complained about the smaller space or the generic cereal instead of name brands. But Marcus saw the way his son's eyes lingered on classmates' new sneakers and expensive backpacks. The security job at Westfield wasn't glamorous, but it provided health insurance and steady hours that let him pick Danny up from school. His supervisor respected his police background, and the mall managers appreciated having someone with real law enforcement experience watching over their high-end retailers. Still, Marcus couldn't help feeling invisible as he walked past shoppers who barely acknowledged his presence. The little girl shifted nervously, clutching a small stuffed elephant to her chest. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elaborate braid that spoke of morning routines involving nannies or devoted mothers with time to spare. Marcus recognized the signs of privilege, but also the universal fear in a child's eyes when separated from safety. Marcus knelt down to the little girl's eye level, his movements slow and gentle. His years as a detective had taught him that frightened children responded better to calm voices and patient gestures than to authority figures towering over them. "Hello there, sweetheart," he said softly. "I'm Marcus, and I work here at the mall. Are you looking for someone?" The girl hugged her stuffed elephant tighter and nodded, her lower lip trembling slightly. "My mommy is in a big meeting upstairs," she whispered. "She said to wait by the fountain, but there are so many people, and I got scared." Marcus felt his heart clench. Danny had been about this age when Marcus first started working nights, leaving his son with Mrs. Rodriguez next door. He remembered the tears and the clinging hugs, the way Danny would press his face against the window watching for his father's return. "What's your name, honey?" Marcus asked, settling into a comfortable crouch despite the ache in his damaged knee. "Sophia," she replied, her voice gaining a little strength. "Sophia, Chun. My mommy is very important and very busy, but she promised she'd come back soon." Marcus glanced around the bustling food court, noting the security cameras and the flow of foot traffic. His trained eyes automatically cataloged exits and potential hazards, a habit that had never left him. That's when he noticed the man in the dark coat near the electronics store, standing perfectly still while everyone else moved with purpose. Something about the man's posture set off alarm bells in Marcus's mind. Marcus kept his voice light and reassuring as he continued talking to Sophia, but his attention was increasingly drawn to the man in the dark coat. The stranger's behavior triggered every instinct Marcus had developed during his 15 years on the police force. While other shoppers moved with the relaxed rhythm of leisure, this man stood rigid, his eyes scanning the crowd with predatory intensity. "Tell me about your elephant," Marcus said to Sophia, buying time while he observed the suspicious figure. "What's his name?" "Mr. Peanuts," Sophia replied, a small smile breaking through her worried expression. "Mommy got him for me when I had to stay in the hospital last year. He keeps the scary dreams away." The man checked his watch for the third time in 2 minutes, then adjusted something beneath his coat. Marcus's blood pressure spiked as he recognized the telltale signs of concealed carry. But this wasn't the casual positioning of someone with a legal permit. This was someone trying to hide something larger, something dangerous. Marcus reached for his radio with practiced casualness, keeping his movements slow to avoid alarming either Sophia or the potential threat. "Unit 7 to command," he said quietly into his shoulder mic. "Need a status check on the second-floor conference areas. Any scheduled events or meetings?" The response crackled back immediately. "Affirmative, Unit 7. High-profile corporate board meeting in progress. Chin Technologies. Security is tied up there." Marcus's heart raced as he connected the dots. Sophia, Chun. Her mother wasn't just at any meeting.